Hey guys, hi again, and sorry, now I'm visible again. So second video of the day. So this is going to be about the PvP tier list for November 2020. So the last tier list was for September, so the metagame hasn't changed a lot, but there have been a few tweaks here and there. So again, this PvP tier list is for Galactic Duel at, let's say, fairly high rank. So we're talking about Legendary, Immortal, and maybe the highest ranks of Diamonds. So of course, below those brackets, there are many more appropriate saints that you can use and that you can play successfully. However, what we will focus on are the strongest saints and compositions that we can find at the high Galactic Duel ranks. So let's have a quick look at some of the most common teams, and from that we can then understand what are the strongest saints. So let's just have a quick look at some lineups. So one of the most common teams right now is the Hades Repair Cloth team, and this is like known as the Hades Repair Cloth team because it became very popular again after Hades had its repair cloth. However, Hades is not really the key member of this team. So the four key components of the team are Hades, Sea Dragon Kanon, Hades Shun, and Mew. And like the engine of this team really is Sea Dragon Kanon and Mew. So Hades can contribute quite a bit of damage, but the reality is if your opponent bans Hades, still you can play some variation of this team and still run the main combo, which is effectively getting someone exiled with Sea Dragon Kanon and then throw in loads of cosmic damage with Mew, Gemini Kanon, and for example whoever is replacing Hades. For example, it could be somebody like Arayashiki Shaka, for example. Now, as I was saying, this is a team which is based on these four main characters, so Hades, Dragon Kanon, Underworld Shun, and Mew. The two slots that are free can be used by different types of saints. So one that I tend to have all the time is Gemini Kanon, and the reason why I play Gemini Kanon is to be able to have 6 energies already on the first turn, to be able to activate Hades and also use the triangle on who I think is going to create more problems in the enemy team. So that's why I use Gemini Kanon. The second slot that I frequently use when it's not banned is Thanatos, because the reality is that this slot needs to be, if I use Gemini Kanon, it needs to be taken by a saint who is able to add loads of value even with 0 energy, and clearly Thanatos is one of such saints. So and it can effectively mark one enemy with 0 energy and then just add a lot of damage to the overall game thanks to his AoE. Other possibilities are, for example, Gold Yoga and also DC Shun. So Gold Yoga and DC Shun also work well here if, for example, Thanatos is banned, because at 0 energy they can add a lot of value. So Gold Yoga can redirect attacks on Hades, and for example you can redirect the enemy Thanatos to mark Hades, and this issue can be very significant to protect, for example, Sea Dragon Kanon or Mew from an enemy Thanatos, for example. So I would say something very important with this team that you will see very frequently in a few of its variations in a high ranked Galactic Duel is that you need to try and have a very fast Gemini Kanon, and the reason to do these is that you want to try and act before the enemy Hypnos to try and hide. Most of the time you will need to hide Sea Dragon Kanon, so that is quite key, because this combo breaks if the enemy Hypnos manages to slow down Kanon to act after Mew. So if that happens, of course, Mew's damage will not flow into the triangle. So one of the reasons to play Gemini Kanon in this slot, or for example another very fast character, is to ensure that you're able to hide Sea Dragon Kanon before the enemy Hypnos has a chance to get him. So having said that, so what does this mean from a tier list perspective? So let's place a few characters there. So what I see in my matches is that my most common bans are Hades and Thanatos. Now, people tend to ban Hades because they don't really want to ban Hades. They are not annoyed by Hades himself. They are annoyed by the team with Sea Dragon Kanon and Mew. They are annoyed by that combo. So they think that by banning Hades, they disable that team, which isn't really true. So as I said, Hades does add a lot of good value to that team, because for example you will have instances where your Mew is marked by the enemy Thanatos, and effectively he dies because of Thanatos' fourth skill, but then he comes back thanks to Hades. So Hades is clearly very significant in that team, so he can add quite a bit of damage when he unleashes the AoE, and he can add survivability to the team. But you see, that fundamental in that team is not really. So you see, at the level of Thanatos in many other teams, he is not. So that's why Hades is actually going to be S. So who is going to be SS is Thanatos. And Thanatos is SS because he's absolutely fundamental in almost all the other teams that are out there, and he's able to pull insane numbers of damage. So he's by far the best damage dealer. He has incredible survivability, and he almost can win games on his own. And as we saw, even in that Sea Dragon Kanon Hades Mew team, Thanatos can fit very well even in that team, because he's able to be extremely useful with a 0 energy cost. So Thanatos, he's SS here. Now, who else deserves to be in the SS tier? So probably Gemini Kanon. Some people will say, well, Gemini Kanon is also an incredibly strong character, because not only he can add lots of DPS, but many teams use him to just generate the 3 extra energies in the first turn, which allows a lot of different strategies to work. So is he at the level of Thanatos? Probably not. Is he at the level of Hades? He's probably slightly above Hades because of his function being both on the support side and damage side. So we're going to place him as S, but the reality is that both Hades and Gemini Kanon can probably be considered slightly above the S level. And again, keep in mind that this is a tier list, so don't look at SS and S in their same sense. Just consider Thanatos top tier, and then Hades and Kanon just one step below. So having determined these three, we can then fill the rest of that team. And as I said, the engine of that team is really the other three characters in that team. And that's why what we're going to do is we're going to place Mew as A. So Mew is clearly not at the level of Hades or Gemini Kanon, so that's why we're populating Mew as A. And again, look at these in a relative sense, right? So Thanatos top tier, just below Hades and Gemini Kanon. Under there we have Mew. We have Underworld Shun. Sorry, I'm trying to find him. Where is Underworld Shun? Here is Underworld Shun. And then we also have Sea Dragon Kanon. Let's see where he is. And he is here. So that is how that team works. Now, the other very common team right now is the one based on June and Hypnos. So June and Hypnos, and let's quickly switch to back to KOTZ and see how that team can work. So for example, one such team will be having let's see. So one such team could be based on June, Hypnos, and then like few more characters. It is very frequent, for example, to see June and for example Hypnos instead of Hades. Sorry, not finding my Hypnos. So here is Hypnos. And you see, like, this is one of those moments where you start thinking, well, when I can only use 6 characters and I want to use June to stabilize my team, I want to use Gemini Kanon to provide the energy, I want to use, for example, Thanatos for his impressive damage, and I want to use Ophiuchus for his immense utility, and I want to use Hades. The reality is that when you're left with this team, well, where do you fit Hypnos, right? Because you only have limited energy. So you could say, well, okay, I'm just going to replace Geki here. So maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Marsh Fairy, for example, on June. And then I'm going to play with this composition. But the problem is that this composition is very energy heavy. And you only have 6 energies in the first turn. So one option is to basic attack with June, which means that you can activate Hypnos, you can activate Hades, and you can activate Ophiuchus. But this clearly creates some potential problems because like you're not playing Underworld Shun in this composition, which means that you're potentially weak to an enemy Gemini Kanon and Hypnos. So for example, if the enemy has a faster Gemini Kanon, they could almost kill your Ophiuchus with Gemini Kanon Hypnos, because they could effectively attack with Gemini Kanon and place Doom on Hypnos and on Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus will be very low. So the reality is, with a team like this, yes, you can play it, but to use Hypnos, Hades, and Ophiuchus on the first turn, you will need not use the skill with June, which you can do, but puts you at risk. So what you can do then, you can try to replace one of these characters, and let's say that June and Gemini Kanon and Thanatos stay there because they are the strongest, right? So let's say you want to replace one across Hypnos, Hades, and Ophiuchus with, for example, Underworld Shun or Geki, right? So let's say you want to use Underworld Shun or Geki. Who are you going to replace? So Hades, we also said, is very, very strong because it gives like a massive increase to survivability of your own team, and also when the Eclipse activates, is also very strong offensively, right? And himself, Hades, is very strong because of the pact. So you're left potentially with having to replace one between Hypnos and Ophiuchus, and it is down to personal choice, really. But the problem with Hypnos is that right now Hypnos can be very good, but he does increase the opponent's Thanatos anger. So every time either Doom or Lost tick on the enemy, Thanatos anger is increased for the enemy, which means that Thanatos will release more AoEs, and he will do a lot more damage to your team. So Hypnos is good, but he has that significant weakness. Although Hypnos is one of the best counters to the team we saw earlier, so the Hades Sea Dragon Kanon team, because Hypnos, if he's able to slow down Sea Dragon Kanon, that can really change the course of the match. So the problem is you're then left with Hypnos or Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus, we know how strong he is because of the revival skill, the healing skill, but also offensively. So Ophiuchus can easily kill enemy Saints with shock and ricochet. So if the enemy is not playing June, shock can easily kill an enemy Saint, and this is even more true if you play with Two-Horned Snake as Central Cosmo. So in terms of damage, Ophiuchus can really completely change the course of a game. Hypnos, he's good, but the reality is at the moment his function is not really damage. Most of the Hypnos being played at the moment, they play either Decelerator or Laurel 3 for healing. So I would say Hypnos is no longer used as damage dealer, is used almost uniquely for control and healing. Whereas Ophiuchus can be used for support, healing, and can do also insane DPS. So the reality is many times when having to decide who am I going to take out of these two, you will be taking out Hypnos. And if you, for example, take out Hypnos and you replace with Underworld Shun, immediately the energy issue is resolved, because you have 6 energies in the first turn. So 1 energy for June, 2 energies for Hades, 2 energies for Fucus, and 1 energy for Underworld Shun. So 6 energies. The same can be said, for example, if you want to use Geki instead of Underworld Shun, or for example, you could use Luna, or for example, you could even use DC Shun. So the reality is, yes, you could play with what on paper is an incredibly strong team, but to do this, you will need to effectively take some risks in the first turn. So you will need to not use June's ability to be able to activate all 3. So having said that, what does this all mean in terms of our tier list then? So let's see. So here we're back. So when we need to place, in this case, let's say, where is Hypnos? Can't see Hypnos here. Did we lose Hypnos? Okay, here he is. So is Hypnos at the same level of Gemini, Kanon and Hades? He probably isn't. He's at just below. So again, he's probably better individually than Sea Dragon, Kanon, Underworld Shun and Mew. However, he's not at the level of Hades and Gemini, Kanon. So it's very good, but he's not at the level of Hades and Gemini, Kanon. So what does this mean for Ophiuchus then? So Ophiuchus, as we said, he's above Hypnos, and probably because of his ability to completely change the course of certain games thanks to his offensive skills, he's probably the only one character who is above. So again, I do not think he is exactly at the level of Hades and Gemini, Kanon, but between A and S, Ophiuchus he is closer to the S level. Now, like the other component of that team is of course June. So and June goes here at level A. And then we need to look at other characters that can fit in those compositions, and effectively they can replace some of the other components. So in this case, who I play very often is Geki, and for example, where is Geki? He's here. So Geki is another one of my Marsh Fairy carriers. So when I play with that second team, Geki is usually my Marsh Fairy carrier in that team, whereas Underworld Shun is the Marsh Fairy carrier in the Hades Repair Cloth team. Now, who else can find a spot in those teams? So Repair Cloth Arayashiki, he's a very strong character. However, he needs to rely on debuffs being placed. So effectively, you need someone like, for example, Thanatos or Aphrodite, or someone with Accelerator to be in the enemy team to be able to use Repair Cloth Arayashiki appropriately. But he can do very significant amount of damage with the right team. Now, the right team in that case will very often include DC Shun. So DC Shun, we're also including him in here. And the reality is that probably there aren't other very significant characters to be included at this like third level. So again, it is A level. That's don't look at the A. Just consider this is the third level of characters. So who do we have then below these? So we will see sometimes that Gemini Kanon is banned. And for example, if you want to play a team like the second one we saw, you still need to have energy generation. So in that case, Athena becomes a replacement for Gemini Kanon. And she can be also very good, but she's not like the team will definitely feel that Gemini Kanon is not there. So it's not a like-for-like replacement, because if you're playing against Hypnos, having Athena can still generate additional energy. But the reality is in many games you will find yourself with one less energy than Kanon, which means that, for example, with the second type of team, you will not be able to use the skill for Underworld Shun or Geki. And then as the game continues, Athena is not able to pull the same damage that Gemini Kanon is able to pull when he has high determination stacks. So Athena is almost a forced replacement for Gemini Kanon when Gemini Kanon is banned and you have a team with high energy requirements, but she's definitely not at the same level. So who else can be in this fourth level? So other characters that are seeing some use, but not that much. Luna. Again, he's a very valid character. He costs 1 energy to give a very significant buff to cosmic damage and physical damage, and he's able to remove art controls. But I guess he's not really finding much space, with the exception of certain teams using Arayashiki Shaka, and is also seen sometimes in some of the Hades Sea Dragon Kanon teams. The only problem with that is that he of course uses 1 energy, so he's not at 0 energy cost character, which means that when using him you will need to change your strategy slightly if you were planning, for example, to use Hades and Sea Dragon Kanon together in the first turn. Nevertheless, he's still a very strong character, but in Galactic Duel, where you can only use 6 characters, is not really finding a lot of space at the high levels. Aphrodite. So Aphrodite is I forgot to but he also belongs to this third level. So he's very strong, and he's the other character who can change the course of a game. What he does suffer is the fact that he's very weak against, for example, Thanatos, because he can add a very significant amount of anger to the enemy Thanatos, and he is also weak to Ophiuchus counterattacks. So Ophiuchus counterattacking, ricocheting an attack from Aphrodite can literally decimate your own team. So Aphrodite is good, but he has quite a few weaknesses. So again, he's not at the same level as the rest of the A-level Saints, but he's probably closer to this group than to this group. So then we're also seeing sometimes this Shiryu. Again, he's not a bad character at all. However, the problem is that where does he fit? And he does take 3 energy in the first turn, and as we saw earlier, right, you can only play a certain number of characters across Thanatos, Hades, Gemini Kanon, Ophiuchus. So for example, you could say, okay, I want to, for example, replace my June with this Shiryu and play with this Shiryu instead, and you can do that, but again the problem is the energy in the first turn, and if you're using your Kanon to generate energy in the first turn, it means that your Kanon will stay visible and will be effectively outside the 2 characters protected by this Shiryu, so your Kanon could be quite easily killed, be killed in the first couple of turns when replacing June with this Shiryu. So he can still find some play, but he's no longer seen that frequently. I think I probably see him in less than 1 in 20 games right now, so it's very rare to see this Shiryu at high levels. So who else? Also Mu, Repair Cloth Mu, he's seen sometimes, but the problem with Mu is that he's very weak to the RS God skill. So the RS God skill almost completely negates Mu, and at the end of the RS God skill, Mu is almost always going to be dead. And also, of course, Ophiuchus is a very significant counter to Mu. And in any case, form of controls such as Geki, Minos, or even the latest Garuda have always been very difficult for Mu to deal with. So it's definitely down in terms of usefulness, but he's still seen from time to time. So if you think that your opponent is going to play without controls and is going to use the Aphrodite God skill, Mu can really change the game. But with so many Sea Dragon Kanon teams who can of course exile him, and so many other teams who use the RS God skill, for example on Aphrodite, Mu has definitely lost quite a bit of popularity. Again, one character that we see quite often also in the Hades Repair Cloth team is Gold Yoga. And again, as I said, it can be your 6th character, but the reality is very often you can find someone better to use there. And for example, this can be DC Shun or Thanatos even, for example, or potentially even Luna. So he's good, and for example, you can try to redirect Thanatos mark on your own Hades, but the problem is that team doesn't really suffer Thanatos that much. That team suffers quite a lot against the mirror match, and the problem is that of course Golden Yoga is pretty much useless in a mirror match, because Sea Dragon Kanon is of course not affected by him, and Mu in its evolved form is not affected by him. So Hades is affected by him, but as we said, like the main combo is Sea Dragon Kanon doing his exile and Mew putting loads of damage into the triangle. So that's why I think he's just the level below here, because in mirror matches you will often think, Golden Yoga is not being particularly useful here. Now, who else do we see from time to time? We see Minos, who is played quite often as a counter to the Sea Dragon Kanon Hades Repair Cloth team. He's a very good character, and for example, you can try to control the enemy Hades to use Pact on the enemy's own team, or you can try to control Kanon to effectively break the combo, so not use the triangle. So he's good. I would say he's very good against the latest character that came out, Garuda, because Garuda is extremely weak to Minos, because with Minos you can control Garuda and make someone from Garuda's team fly. So effectively, not only you waste the ability to exile someone, so which will go in cooldown for 1 round, but you will also effectively CC one additional person from Garuda's own team. So Minos was already being seen. Now, when you see someone using Garuda on your opponent's team, try to use Hypnos, because it can be very fun to play against Garuda. So Minos is also there. The Pope is also sometimes seen in the Hades Repaired Clothes team, and I've used him, if you recall my Jameer match last month. You remember that the Pope is used in the first turn. So in the first turn, with the 6 energies, you activate Hades, and then you use another dimension from the Pope, which gives you a massive control over the board. Again, I've seen him quite a few times in that same team, but he's not played that frequently. However, like, playing the Pope in that team can be very significant if your opponent has a much higher level of characters and skill ups and stats respect to you, because the Pope can really change the course of the game there. Now, other characters that are probably just below this level, we're going to have Guilty here. Again, he's used, but again, he's very weak, for example, to be controlled by the enemy Minos, and can sacrifice his own team. And the reality is that Guilty is fairly useless against the Hades Repair Cloth team, and there are other ways to control him as well. So Geki, for example, can control him, and it can be fairly easily countered. Normal Shaka, again, it can be seen sometimes, but it's just not that ideal, because the problem is that he really suffers against Thanatos, so he gives way too much energy, too much anger to the enemy Thanatos. And the reality is that the Hades Repair Cloth team very often has ways to get around Repair Cloth normal Shaka. So he's definitely not that popular. I don't think I've seen him in the entire month. Saori, also in Galactic Duel, is no longer really seen, I've seen it, probably have seen her once in an Hades Repair Cloth team, similar to the one that Papamlet played tonight. Again, the Ichi saga, Ichi Evil Saga, so they can be seen together. So I did see this team a couple of times. So Ichi, Minos, and Evil Saga. So if the enemy is playing Garuda, it can be a devastating combo, because you go Ichi Minos, control the enemy Garuda, and then use the exile skill to exile somebody from the enemy's team, and you also trigger at the same time the attack from Evil Saga. So it can be an incredible combo to play against that team, but it isn't really a very popular team. So are there other characters that are seen? I've seen, I would say, one Sorrento, but again, Sorrento does need to have a team which uses also Underworld Shun, and unfortunately, with the presence of Raya Shikishaka, it is fairly frequent to see it going, really. So other than this, I don't think I've seen any other character. So I did see, you see, this is interesting. So I also did see Garuda, actually. So I did see a couple of Garudas. So I'm going to place Garuda also here. I think he's the way it was done on global. It is of course better than the Chinese server. So having the energy costs of the abilities cut by 1, and some enhancements to the stats of the abilities is definitely useful. The problem is the 1 turn cooldown. So because of the 1 turn cooldown, I don't really like Garuda. I think he's significantly weaker than the other controls that are already in the list. So Kanon, who of course costs significantly more energy, but is often the top damage in most of the games played with that team. Geki, because of course he's able to use a 1 energy crowd control every single turn, and he's also able to very often control with 0 energy in those desperate cases. And also Minos, because Minos of course can for example force Hades to create a pact with its own team, or if there is a Minos versus Garuda, again can completely change the course of the game, because Minos can control Garuda and make somebody from Garuda's own team fly. And also the Pope is better because effectively he's able to achieve 5 controls with just 4 manas used in the first turn. So this is the problem. 1 turn cooldown really breaks the character, and some people even in my legion have told me, well, but you can play Garuda with Underworld Shun, and yes, of course you can, but who are you going to take out? Because you've already seen that, for example, in that team, there aren't really spots left even for someone like Hypnos or Hades or Fucus. So who are you going to take out to introduce Garuda and Underworld Shun? Are you going to take out somebody like Ophiuchus or Hades or Hypnos for Garuda and Underworld Shun to be able to do what is effectively 1 energy control 1 turn, and then every turn afterwards it becomes a 2 energy control? So this is the main problem, right? And clearly they tried to make it more appealing, but I don't think it worked. So it would have worked, for example, by leaving the energy cost unchanged and removing the 1 turn cooldown. That would have made Garuda definitely a more interesting character. But leaving the 1 turn cooldown just makes him not really that functioning in the current metagame. So we'll see what happens. I do not think they can just remove the 1 turn cooldown if they do, for example, the Garuda repair cloth, because the reality is if they do remove the 1 turn cooldown with the 1 energy cost, at that point it becomes overpowered. So 2 energy cost with no cooldown would have been a good saint, but 1 energy cost with no cooldown will become unbalanced. So I'm not sure how they will fix this, but definitely Garuda is not a top tier saint right now. So let me know your comments. I hope you found this discussion useful, and again, I'll see you next time. Please do subscribe to the channel and like the video, and let me know your comments.